There's, you get your t-shirt, then a long t-shirt, then a sweater, maybe a second sweater, some sort of kind of internal jacket.
What's up, guys? Welcome back to another episode of eSKATE Chat with Evolve, and this week we got Brandon on all the way from Chicago to talk about how to survive winter on your electric skateboard. How you doing?
I'm good. Thanks for having me on.
How's the weather going over in Chicago right now? Give us a rundown of what you're facing.
It's actually not too bad compared to the average winter. It's been kind to us this year. Not as cold as usual, kind of been hovering around the freezing points. We just recently started getting a bunch of salt on the roads, which isn't my favorite, but it's workable.
I looked it up before I came on. You're sitting around the 0 degrees Celsius mark, up and down, sometimes gets down to about -5 sort of thing.
Yeah. There's some winters where we're going to get even lower. In Fahrenheit, we'll get down to, like -1 to -10. And that's just before you kind of get the wind chill effect in there. So sitting around, 32 for us, 0 degrees in Celsius, isn't too bad.
Yeah, cool. All right. So on this podcast, what we want to get stuck into is all the things that the precautions you take and the things you do to make sure you can ride as much as you can during winter, keeping yourself safe, keeping your board in good health, all the things that anyone in a cold weather climate should know how to do to get the most out of their board and their ride. So what do you think? Let's start with clothing, because that's going to be a pretty important one, right?
Yeah, I agree. I'd say layers are really key. You're going to kind of want to dress like you're going snowboarding, and that means like extra thick socks. I'll usually put on like some sort of long johns or leggings underneath my jeans. There's, you get your t-shirt, then a long t-shirt, then a sweater, maybe a second sweater, some sort of kind of internal jacket, then maybe one more light jacket before you get the full winter coat on. And I've been using a lot of heated apparel, which I've found pretty helpful. I have a heated vest and a heated outer jacket, which has kind of, helped mitigate some of the layers that I have to wear and make me feel a little more secure. In terms of face coverings, you're definitely going to want some sort of beanie that you're able to squeeze under your helmet. I actually will sometimes use a larger helmet in the winter just so that I'm able to actually still fit the helmet properly on my head. And then you'll want either a smaller face mask or sometimes even multiple face masks just to kind of keep all that skin covered, because especially in Chicago when you're getting down into these, really low temperatures and you have that wind chill from riding blasting into your face, you're actually at a frostbite risk. So having no skin exposed at all is usually the best case. And that also goes with a set of gloves as well. You can't forget those. Every little portion of skin when you're getting down into those really cold temperatures should be covered.
Yeah, awesome. There's a couple things in that I want to unpack. So you said a heated jacket. We're from Australia, so we don't get into that too much. Is that a legitimate, a power source within a jacket which heats it?
Yeah, so there'll be a little removable battery pack that you can take out. You can recharge it. It also has a little USB port, so you can use it as a little battery bank for your phone. And then there's different, there's little kind of heating strips that go throughout the jackets. My vest has a little heating around in the neck. There's some in the back. My outer jacket has chest, back, inside your pockets as well. And you can kind of cycle between different heat modes, whether you want that to be, just a little extra boost in warmth or as warm as you can go. And some of these batteries, you can get up to, on the highest setting, I'd say it's about maybe 3 hours on full blast. On some of the lower settings, you could have it last for, 24 straight hours.
Yeah, that's a cool way to stay warm. I've never experienced that before, but I think for an e-skater that would be a good way to avoid that sudden chill getting out and about. Do the jackets you wear have some sort of wind protection as well?
Yeah, they're usually made of material that's pretty wind deflectant, and not everyone wears the outerwear one. That's a little more unusual. Most people have like the vest, which they kind of use underneath their outer jacket, which creates like a shell of warmth. At one point, we were kind of all joking because we all bought the same vest from the same company. So when, we'd show up at our charge spots on group rides, it would almost look like we were all in uniform because we're all wearing the exact same heated vests.
Yeah, cool. With the gloves as well, how do you have a specific type that you like? Because you obviously have to balance having some dexterity in your fingers as well as it being thick enough to stop the cold coming through.
Yeah, that has always kind of been a challenge with e-skating, is finding the right glove that kind of works with your remote. Because you have to kind of mix in between something that is, thin enough that you can still actually feel what you're doing with the remote, but that's not so thick that you have no idea, how hard you're pressing the buttons. Funny enough, I actually use heated gloves as well to ride when it gets really cold. Definitely skin tight is my main recommendation for anyone who needs gloves. You want it to be, as best a fit as possible, because it really makes all the difference, and allows you to probably go a little bit thicker when it comes to getting a glove on and still using your remote effectively and safely.
Moving on from that, so winter doesn't always necessarily mean wet, right?
Yeah. We'll have some, kind of dry spells and wet spells. Usually after a snow, you can kind of have some of that wet and moisture stick around on the road. But we do, especially living in Chicago, which is a big city, they're pretty good about salting the streets and things will dry out pretty quickly. So it gets a little safer. We try not to ride as much when the roads are damp, and if you're going to do so, definitely pneumatics is the way to go because urethane will slip all over the place.
That was going to be my next question. Do you find yourself riding the all-terrain a lot more during winter?
Yeah, definitely the all-terrain is a little more helpful, especially if you want to kind of ride on a better variety of roads, because the last thing you want to do, on a cold winter night is take a spill just because your wheels were a little bit too slick. And also, I think it's important to maintain the tire pressure in your wheels, because depending on how much the temperature fluctuates, it'll actually change how much air is in there. So I like to kind of keep an eye on that when I'm running the pneumatics, just to make sure I'm not losing too much air depending on how cold it gets.
With winter comes less sunlight as well, right? What time is it getting dark where you are?
Usually, by the time most people are getting off work, it's dark. Days are getting a little bit longer now, which I'm grateful for, but around, 5 p.m., it's completely dark. So definitely, especially in Chicago, where you're going to have like a lot of like potholes and cracks, and all the kind of expansion gaps from the winter will be pretty big. You're going to want a good lighting situation, whether that's, I'd recommend, on your board, also a handheld flashlight, something on your helmet. Just, you definitely want to be able to see the road ahead of you, because almost all the rides you're going to be doing, during the week outside of work are always going to be dark.
All right, so see and be seen. Shoutouts, we like our shred lights. I know you like your shred lights as well. They're good because they can mount onto the board, but you can get little attachments for helmets and backpacks and all those sort of things.
Yeah, definitely easy to swap, and they have that new light coming out that's like several times as bright as the ones they currently have, and I'm really excited to get my hands on those. I think it'll definitely be a big game changer, especially in terms of being seen by other cars. Being in a big city, visibility, I think is something that people often overlook, but is pretty important, because you do get a lot of, reckless drivers, people not paying attention, especially, on a Chicago night where it's sub-freezing temperatures. They're not expecting, a guy on a skateboard to be flying at 20 plus miles an hour down the road.
That's when reflective sort of gear could also come into the mix. I know Lazy Rolling and a few other jacket companies do have reflective uppers, as well as a protection and the warmth. So that's something people could definitely look into.
Yeah, I agree. I have those little reflective strips on the back of my Evolve backpack, which have definitely proven handy. Good to be seen, that's for sure.
Just about an hour ago, I was actually had my hands on that new SL1000. Is it SL1000? The new shred light?
Yeah.
Yeah, we have a sample here, and it is bright. Very bright.
I should get it. I should be getting my hands on a few of them soon. I'm really excited to, test them out, get a little review out. They definitely look like a game changer in terms of just their size, the versatility, and swapping them around. Like they've been upping the game a lot, so really excited for this next generation.
Yeah, I think it'll work well in combination with the other lights as well, because we're testing them in daytime, so it's hard to tell. But it looks like it throws light a lot further. It's more like a spotlight, so you can really see what's ahead of you. I think that'll be super cool for a lot of people to check out. Let's get on to storing your board. That's a question we get at Evolve all the time. So there's two sides to it. What do you do if you're going to be, I guess, riding your board, keeping it as your commuter, or if you just put it away for the winter?
Yeah, so riding as a commuter, it's always good to store your board in basically a temperature-controlled place. I live in an apartment, so it's not too much of an issue for me. But, if you have a garage or, a kind of a bike room in an apartment building that's unheated, you're definitely going to want to avoid that. Because kind of when the battery is off, the prolonged exposure to the cold will kind of degrade your battery a little bit faster and can kind of, decrease your range overall a little bit more. So it's always good to keep it in like a safe area. When you're actually riding, the battery is, it's heating itself enough that it's not going to cause any problems. But in terms of storage, during the winter, you always want to make sure it's warm.
Yeah,
we
definitely agree with that. So keep it inside pretty much. Keep it nice and warm. Don't let it get freezing cold, and you'll be all right. You can ride in a 0 degrees sort of climate because the board's going to heat itself up. You just don't want some crazy fluctuation of heat where it's sitting outside in -5 in a garden shed, and then you heat it up in your ride, and then you let it get cold over and over again.
Yeah, and then I'd say for the people who aren't, they're going to put their board away for the winter, which is pretty reasonable. Not everybody is as crazy as we are in Chicago, and it makes sense. I normally say storing your board somewhere between 40-50% is the best. Storing it at 100% capacity is not, the best for the long-term health of your battery. Kind of the same situation where it'll degrade the health of the battery a little bit more over time. So just kind of storing it sort of in the mid-range, go for a little ride before you put it away for the season. Keep it in the same temperature-controlled dried place, and you'll be all set for the spring weather.
100%. Something that we see on the forums a lot, and you've experienced, is the difference in range you're going to experience when you start riding in cold weather, or as the weather drops, you're going to experience a different amount of range you're getting from your board. Do you want to tell us about your experiences with that, coming both into and out of winter?
Yeah, I think that's something a lot of people don't realize, especially going into winter, just because naturally it's so cold, you'll generally spend a little less time outside. But if you're paying attention, it can actually have a pretty substantial effect on range. It's surprising how much it'll drop just because of, the sub-freezing weather. You can get anywhere from 20 to 40% less, especially in Chicago with the cold winds pushing on you all the time in the winter. You're really not going to see what you'd expect as much, and it doesn't matter how much I know that. Every spring, once it starts warming up, I'm always surprised, because that range loss is only temporary. It comes back. So I'll always be like, oh my god, I forgot I could go this far. And it's really relieving. But for anyone, first winter, or they got their board in the winter, they're, a little worried about the range. They don't think they're getting what they're, supposed to be getting. Once spring rolls around, you'll see a pretty drastic difference. And it always, makes for a great open of the season when you're finally able to go on those longer rides again in some beautiful weather.
Yeah, for sure. All right, so let's talk about community. Group rides in summer are beautiful. Everyone goes down the park and hangs out. What does the group ride and community situation look like in Chicago, at least during the winter time?
Yeah, in the winter is when you're going to get the more hardcore riders, the people who are really, dedicated, usually the core members of the community. Not to say that, core members only come out in the winter, but the people who are all about riding all the time are always out. And it makes for some pretty fun group rides because, you're normally having to bounce between location to location. In terms of charging, you want to be indoors for your stops just to ensure, the safety and sanity of all the riders, but just participating in something that's, so insane and so much, fun to do really, I think helps bring the community closer and has really, brought the Chicago community together because you feel crazy going out in that weather as you're throwing on your 6th or 7th layer. You're like, am I really about to go do this for 4 hours? But it's all worth it, and it's been so much fun. I couldn't imagine not riding in the winter, and I always think it's better to ride with friends, so I'm lucky that the Chicago community is just as crazy as I am.
Do you ever session underground car parks? I know a lot of places around the world, the communities sort of use them as a safe haven away from weather.
Yeah, occasionally we will get into the underground parking lots, when security allows it. It usually happens when we're getting, a lot of snow, a lot of some of that more nasty weather. And, we're all texting in the group chat, itching to be able to get out, go on a ride, and there's a few in downtown Chicago that are pretty good for riding, and we all, we'll kind of get together, we'll ride around in the garage. Not as often as we'd like, probably. Mostly the rule, as our community goes, is if it's dry, we ride. No matter what the temperature is, we'll get out. And we'll, if you're going to go out in that kind of temperature anyways, we figure might as well go all the way, ride to all the normal spots, ride down all the normal roads. It's just when we kind of start to get into those long periods of unrideable conditions that the car parks become really attractive.
I can imagine once all the streets are covered in snow or it's raining and miserable, that's going to drive you underground. But if it's just cold and dry, you can just put on 7 layers and continue. Sounds insane compared to what we're used to in our group ride situation here. Usually what we're trying to do is wear clothing that gives us enough protection without it being too hot. So we want thin gloves that breathe, and pads are too hot, all those sort of things. So it's really polar opposites.
Yeah, we don't really have that problem as much. It's always how to stay as warm as possible, and especially once you get into those really cold temperatures, there's nothing you can do. You can layer up as much as possible. Once you get to the end, from one destination to the other, say, in the summer we're doing 10-mile, 12-mile sprints from one destination to another. In the winter, it's 4 to 6 at most. At a certain point, especially moving quickly into the wind and the cold weather, you just need to get inside. There's only so much that you can handle no matter what you're wearing. And it's always the extremities first. You'll get the hands, you'll get the shoes. That kind of area, it's always a little lacking in protection. There's not, enough that you can put there to really keep the cold out.
About a year ago, over in the UK, they face a very similar problem, except it's even more wet. So they have long periods where they can't ride at all. We were looking for a solution to try and get people riding throughout winter, do something for the community. And we were able to team up with some local go-kart tracks, indoor go-kart tracks, and host these open events. We opened them up to all the electric vehicles, so scooters and bikes and all sorts of boards. They all came out. That's sort of a model we really wanted to do in more places around the world, but as we all know, the restrictions and lockdowns make events like that sort of difficult. What do you think the sort of feedback on an event like that would be if you were allowed a 3-hour group session in a sort of designated event, and just a bit more legitimate, I guess, in a group ride?
Yeah, our community would definitely be ecstatic. It's something we've been really wanting to do for years. It's just been a little out of our reach. Here and there's been like an indoor skate park or two we've been able to get into, but those really, aren't meant for electric skateboards. You can do a little something here or there, but in terms of an actual track, that's basically been everybody's dream. All winter long. We'd love to have the opportunity to just, open it up in an indoor venue and really get to enjoy the boards.
Stay tuned. Hopefully these restrictions go away and we can make something happen. Definitely on the cards for Evolve to be doing that. One of the best parts of winter is when spring rolls around, right?
Yeah, definitely.
What's your 2021 looking like? What do you plan? What do you hope to do in terms of your e-skating?
In terms of my e-skate plans this year, I'm really hoping once the warm weather kind of runs around, things will be eased a little bit more in terms of restrictions, and we're really able to get back out on those group rides. We really haven't had the opportunity to do as many events this year as we would have liked to, because normally we do something every Tuesday night and then usually every other Saturday, and kind of going from that frequent riding to not really getting to meet at all has definitely been, a little bit of a downer. So definitely the focus will be on making events work, and, if that means we can't actually go into places when the spring rolls around, we'll make it work anyways, because I know everyone has been a little, down in the dumps this winter. So even just, riding to big parks where there's charging spots is going to be something that's going to be on everybody's minds, just so we can find ways to safely all get together. We actually have this pretty big map we've been working on. It's a community map where we basically finds outlets and charging spots all around the city and like outer lying areas, so that anybody at any time can go on there. If they're planning out a ride that they're going to need to charge on, or they just need a little break, it'll kind of show all the spots where you're able to plug in outdoors, kick back, relax a little bit while you charge. And so kind of using that map to help plan group rides has been fantastic, and even just personal rides. And so I think, utilizing stuff like that and kind of expanding on that will be key for how we're going to plan and do our group rides coming into this year, as we still deal with certain restrictions and safety precautions that we have to take.
Cool. I think I heard someone in the London community do a similar thing with mapping it out. Where are you hosting that if anyone is from Chicago but doesn't know about it? How do they get hold of it?
We have a Facebook group called Chicago eSKATE, which is usually where we'll have most of our events going. We have a Telegram chat as well, and then I'll post about events on my own personal page just to kind of get people engaged and excited. In the Facebook group or our Telegram chat is where we'll have like access to all like the resource guides. We have the charging map. We'll have a restaurant friendly guide, which we haven't been able to utilize as much recently, but is basically shows all the places where you can go grab like a bite to eat, a drink, and they're not going to hassle you at all about charging, that they kind of welcome the community in. And we have a bunch of really local spots that we'll visit a lot that are super friendly to us. They'll open up whole back rooms that are off limits to the public just so we can put all of our gear, we can plug all our boards in, they lock it back up, and we don't have to worry about it while we're there. And, even the times where we've had a few too many riders, we've actually blown the socket, they'll still come and they'll help us out. They'll let us do what we need to do. I've seen a bartender at one of our local places stop mid-drink. He was in the middle of pouring someone a drink, and he stopped because we blew the circuit, and he went to go reset the power for us before he finished. And I was blown away. I was like, wow, they really love us.
That's nice of him. Good lad. We still got a bit of time, so why don't we jump into your relationship with Evolve? So I don't know if we said it at the start, but you are our Chicago ambassador.
Yeah.
Rep and Evolve. Do you remember how long it's been? It's over a year now, right? No, almost.
Yeah, not a year yet. I believe we started talking in March or April of 2020.
We got a birthday coming up.
Yep. Excited for it. It's been a very big year for me, and definitely sort of life-changing in terms of what I've been doing, electric skateboarding wise, and how I've been able to expand my relationships and kind of impact on the community.
Coming to an Evolve board, there was a couple things that you hadn't experienced before. Mainly would be, let's say, the range, double kingpin trucks, and all-terrain tires. Let's run through those things. What are your views now on? We all know what your views are on ranges. That's great. Double kingpins and all-terrain. Let's go.
Double kingpins, at first I wasn't sure how I was going to like them, but they quickly became, almost like a drug I couldn't get enough of. They really are a lot of fun. And I started by riding longboards, specifically bamboo boards, and kind of the feeling that riding on double kingpins, especially on, the bamboo GTR has given me, has just, brought me back so much to what it felt like when I was first riding normal longboards around Chicago. And that feeling is something I can't escape now. It doesn't feel right to not ride on double kingpins and be able to kind of experience that sort of surfy, carvy feeling. It's evolved into so much of my e-skating experience and what I strongly identify with e-skating. For me, it's kind of hard to explain, but it's a happy feeling. It puts me in a good place. I couldn't go back. I love the double kingpins. I know some people are either one way or another, and I'm officially on the double kingpin side.
Living for the carve. We know that feeling. That's what we're all about.
Yeah, in terms of the pneumatics, I think at the end of the day, I'm still a urethane skater. It was kind of my roots, and I have a hard time letting go of them, and I'll swap back and forth a lot. Every time I'm on pneumatics, I'm always like, wow, this is awesome, it's so comfortable, I can ride anywhere. But then I find myself frequently switching back to those street wheels, just because of the raw feeling it gives, how close you are to the road. It's been a big toss-up for me. Definitely having the versatility of being able to go off-roading has been fantastic. That was something I hadn't experienced before on an electric board, and it's definitely a few good trails around the Chicago area where you can really, put that to the test. And that, that's something that's worth throwing them on. Even if I'm riding urethane most of the time, if, a few buddies are going out to ride the trails, like, pneumatics going right on. Like, I want to be a part of it. I want to shred out there. But at the end of the day, it has to be urethane for me.
Awesome. All right, that's probably going to wrap us up there. So thanks for coming on. If you haven't followed Brandon yet, it's eBoard Brandon on Instagram. You can follow us at Evolve Skateboards. The podcast is now out. The video's on YouTube. We're officially on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Podcasts, all the other good podcast places. So yeah, we'll see you next time.